Vice President Harris is set to outline her economic agenda in her first set of public policy proposals since announcing her campaign for president. The plan will include up to $25,000 in down payment support for first-time buyers and a child tax credit, as well as a push against so-called price gouging. For more on these proposals and the potential economic implications, we've got Paul Krugman, New York Times opinion columnist and Nobel Prize winner in economics. Paul, it's great to have you on. So I want to start on the price gouging. I'm sure you've been on Twitter this morning and you've seen finance community having a field day, rolling their eyes at price gouging proposals. So I want to get your take. Is there a route where telling businesses, hey, we are looking at prices can be effective, or is it the traditional market view that prices are always going to be whatever the consumer will bear?
Oh, I mean, price gouging happens. It's not, if you think that there's never an issue there, then you're stuck, in chapter 3 of your economics textbook. There have been real episodes of price gouging in the past. I think a lot about what happened in California in the electricity market in 2001. So it's a possible issue. And now, if the Harris people think that price gouging was a central factor in recent inflation, I'd be worried because I don't know very many economists who think that that's right. If they think that it's okay to single out a few examples and make some gestures, fine. So, a lot depends upon what you think this is telling you. Not that it's not bad economics to worry about companies exercising market power. It is bad economics to think that you can put aside all of the normal macroeconomic issues. And my guess is that this is mostly, this is an extremely popular position, and they're making a gesture, and they might single out a few examples, but probably not more than that.
Paul, what about the ability to implement it? How big of a change, how big of an impact it's going to have? What does that more realistically look like? And then as we take a step back and try to figure out where we are in this fight to tame inflation, how much progress has been made, What is your assessment just about what the road ahead looks like?
Well, basically, we are, we've beaten inflation. I mean, once you take out sort of lagged effects of housing, most measures are pretty much at the Fed's 2% target, or at most, a fraction of a percentage point above it. So that's it. I mean, it's kind of odd to be going after. Well, all right, but the point is that fundamentally, we've made a full round trip on inflation. We are back to a reasonable level, a level where people looking forward. And I look at the expectation surveys, people's expectations of inflation are now low enough that we've entered that space where people just don't think about inflation much in making their decisions, which is where you want to be. So that's a war that's been won. And all of this, that's not really the concern now.
What is the concern then?
Well, I'm worried, it's extremely fuzzy and foggy. But it does look as if we are starting to see that that long period of very high interest rates is starting to take a toll. At this point, you can pick your economic measure and be either optimistic or pessimistic, depending upon your personality. But it does look as if there's at least some risk that we might be tipping into a slowdown. We're almost certainly not in a recession now. We won't be in one for a few months, even on the worst case scenario. But it's time, time for the Fed to start cutting, time to signal that we understand that the job is done. And now priority one should be making sure that this is actually a soft landing and not crashing into the runway.
Paul, I really appreciate you saying that, because sometimes while we're covering this, I feel like I could just pick any data set to tell any narrative. I'm not sure which one to pick. So I appreciate your explanation on that. But it makes me wonder how big a risk you think any potential slowdown might be, particularly for the Harris campaign as we do head towards November.
Well, if there's going to be a noticeable slowdown, it's going to happen quite soon for it to have a big impact on the campaign. I mean, it takes people's views of the economy will, for the most part, be shaped in the next month or two. And, data coming in on November 1st are not going to move the election unless there's a financial crash. So the 2008 election was probably determined by the collapse of Lehman Brothers on September 15th, but that's there's no sign of anything like that on the horizon. So unless there's a big spike in unemployment, I would almost say that the next jobs report is going to be the last one that matters for the election. And right now it's so far as objective economic indicators go, it's a pretty good place for Harris. It doesn't look it's very unlikely that we'll be in something that looks like a recession in time for it to matter to voters.
And Paul, I'm interested in getting your take, too, on some of the reaction we've seen from Silicon Valley as we head into this election, particularly thinking about some of the tech billionaires, Elon Musk amongst them, supporting former President Trump. What do you make of that motivation, given Trump's broader base of voters?
Well, I mean, tech billionaires are those particular rich are not like you and me. They have particularly they have their it's not even, I think, financial self-interest. There are ego issues. There's this sense that maybe they aren't respected enough by liberals, something like that. And remember, these are the crowd that has rallied around Trump in Silicon Valley are heavy overlap with the people who a year ago decided that RFK Jr. was their great shining hope, which just goes to show that they have extremely bad political judgment and are kind of they've somehow convinced themselves that Trump is their guy, even though realistically he's probably bad for their financial self-interest.
Paul, as we wrap this up, I want to ask you about the recent commentary that we got from former President Donald Trump there. In his comments on an independent Fed, he obviously wants a little bit more sway. It's likely not going to be an independent Fed as an issue, likely probably won't sway voters or the outcome of the election. But talk to us just about the importance of it and maybe why voters should care a little bit more about the independence of a Fed and the implications then for the economy.
Yeah, I mean, we had this little bout of inflation, but by and large, for the past 40 years now, we've had stable, low inflation. And the way we did that, we and other rich countries did that, is by having independent central banks. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the Fed is independent. There's nothing to stop Congress from passing a law tomorrow that says that the Fed becomes a part of the executive branch and runs at the discretion of the president. But we found that as a practical solution, leaving monetary policy in the hands of quasi-independent technocrats is a pretty good system. They don't always get it right, but better than having it be at the whims of politicians. Now, that's a big issue. And I don't, if Trump is elected, to think that he would stop at having a say in the affairs of the Fed would be completely at odds with everything else. He would want to run the Fed. He would want to say that monetary policy operates in the service of my political agenda. And that's a path that has gone very badly. I mean, you don't even have to go to Venezuela or something. The last time we had really serious politicization of monetary policy was under Richard Nixon. And the results were disastrous. It was a gratuitous burst of inflation that helped to set the stage for everything that went wrong in the rest of the 1970s. So, voters, I would be curious to have a poll to find out how many voters even know what the Federal Reserve is. But for business people, this should be a big deal.
Really good point, Paul. And thank you so much for making the time to join us. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you. Paul Krugman, New York Times opinion columnist and Nobel Prize winner. Thank you.